Well, here we are. We're glad to be here. And I'm Silvia Gina Hunt, as you know, and I'm your host today. And today we just have amazing guests and also a dear friend, Miss Kendall Jackman. And I'm going to let her just fascinate your minds. Please listen carefully and let's make change for the better, for world peace.
You put a lot on my shoulders just now. Hopefully I can deliver.
I know you can, my sister. So tell me, where do you want to start? I'm just ready to absorb all this new information.
I guess we should start with housing. Since our mayor has a 10-year plan that seems to be, as a lot of folks, whether they're organizers or people in the neighborhoods that are going to be gentrified, are calling it Bloomberg Light. People don't see much difference between the two plans. 200,000 apartments in 10 years is only, 2,000 a year, 20 a year. You can't preserve apartments if you're allowing landlords to take them offline from rent control or rent stabilized. And the affordable housing that's being built is not affordable for native New Yorkers who've lived here for the last century, last 50 years. With minimum wage jobs, folks can't afford to live in these new apartments. The Bronx has the distinction of being the bottom of the congressional districts in the country, and yet they're building affordable housing in that neighborhood where a studio apartment begins at $830-something a month.
And that's outrageous.
I mean, folks can't afford that. You have people who are already living doubled and tripled up in that neighborhood, working 2 jobs each to pay the rent that they're paying now, and then you're going to tell them that we're going to put this building up down the street and you can get an affordable house, apartment, if you have $900. Well, they don't have $900 now. Where they're going to get it in the future? I mean, seriously, if you're living in an apartment now, in a building that's theoretically rent stabilized, but your rent goes up every year, every 2 years, depending on your lease, and you are working 2 jobs now, and there's 3 adults in the house, and each of you are working 2 jobs, that's 6 jobs just to make that rent. How many people are you going to need to live in a studio to pay a rent for $900 if you can't pay something like that now?
I know, it's ridiculous. I'm, for my own self, and struggling. And I know that just generally, my sisters, that you mentioned that, just a struggle for the people that already have a place. Woe for the homeless people, or the people that are, right now looking for jobs and just making it, staying at one relative a couple of weeks and another relative a couple of weeks. And a lot of them even forced maybe to venture out, maybe just think about getting on one of them buses and going somewhere where it's warm. And just, I guess they better be saying their prayers, right?
Definitely.
It's absolutely horrible and horrendous here for for the people here. You get one wage, one job, and everything is above the job means. And then the people like me that are in housing, and even with the NYCHA is just terrible. I mean, if I get a penny, if they see that I get a penny, and it's only a penny, they don't want half. They want to. They see that I get a penny, and they'll charge me an extra $100. I get a penny more, and they charge me $100. And it's just that's so sad because a lot of people look at America as the place of opportunity. Here in New York, what you're saying is like this is a wildfire. That they just set the place on fire and everybody else just get burnt, or they burn to death, or they have to jump in the water, and the jumping in the water is homelessness, or the hospital, or jail, or please give us.
New York is the place of opportunity, but it's stacked against low income people of color in this city, basically across the country. I work with an organization, Right to the City Alliance, which is based here in New York, but it's a national organization of nonprofit organizations working on housing.
Okay.
Whether it's rental or home ownership, foreclosure, etc. And you see the same thing happening across the country that's happening here in New York. There are jobs, all right, For folks that look like us, we can work McDonald's, clean, hotel rooms, things like that. If you want a tech job, you have to be Caucasian or Asian, and I'm not being racist. It's just the facts. CUNY tuition is outrageous. We had an intern 3 years ago when I was working with Picture the Homeless, who was attending CUNY, and her senior year, and she was complaining about tuition. And I looked at her and said, when I went to school in '74 at Medgar Evers, all I paid was my student membership, which was $28. Tuition was free. I had to buy my books.
And isn't that the way, not to cut you off, but isn't that the way that it should be? Don't you think that if they educate people, for free? Because, I would be thinking in the back of my mind, if other people can come here and go to school for free, then what is the problem with here, the people here that have to struggle in such a way? And if that's not enough to cause some type of resentment, just because if we're naturally born heirs of this United States, something is seriously wrong. And that's another thing that I'm glad that you brought up that we can identify, because that has to be part of the overall plan that you want to talk about. That, it has to be this link and that link and all of these links that can come to a better way of humanity. Because on a humanized way, shouldn't people be able to have a place to live? And should it take all of their livelihood from them to have the place? Okay, everything that they get goes to the rent, and little scraps go to food. I've got friends that are working so hard, they can't even have food. They have to, I know years ago it was said that our elderly people that retired, things are so high, they eating dog food and cat food. And I'm wondering what's going on today.
It's the same thing. When you said that, I thought of elders back in the 70s who theoretically qualified for food stamps because their Social Security was so low, and they had to wait. I had a grandmother who was on Social Security. She was supposed to get Section 8. She was on a waiting list for 3 years. If she didn't have my mother, she'd have been eating dog food and cat food too. She never got to Section 8. She transitioned before it came through. But they had elders on waiting lists for 5-10 years back in the 70s. Now we're in 2015. It's worse. Back to the education piece. The students from CUNY and a lot of the faculty and staff, non-faculty staff, agree with you. Because a lot of the people now on the board making those decisions went to CUNY for free back in the day. Like our former governor, Mario Cuomo, he went for free.
Right.
General Colin Powell went for free.
Right.
He's put together a school there, so he's not, saying, oh, I did it, like Clarence Thomas would say, pull yourself up by your bootstraps. But CUNY was supposed to be free.
Right.
But once they took that away, and then I read an article sometime this year, and it's true, as the population of CUNY browned, and you have Caribbean children going to school, and you have children from other countries going to school, suddenly they needed tuition. When it was still basically a white school, and I'm talking about all divisions of CUNY, tuition didn't go up, and then they finally started it. But the more it gets brown, and foreign-born, more or less, or parents are foreign-born, tuition keeps going up every year. Grants, you get but so much from a Pell Grant. Students are getting loans to go to school, and there are arguments that they're paying as much for grants to go to CUNY as if they were going to an Ivy League school. So if you're going to pay that much money, you might as well apply for an Ivy League school. Students apply for CUNY because it's supposed to be the city's university. You're supposed to be able to go and get an education. And the fact that they're raising the tuition and students can't go for what they want to, that's why you have the disparity between who's getting the tech jobs and who's getting the low-wage jobs. And additionally, last week, maybe 2 weeks ago, I read an article in Epic Times about Barnard College, which is the sister school to Columbia. It's winter recess. They have foreign exchange students who have nowhere to go. If you can't afford to go back home, where are you going to stay? They suggested that they house sit, see if they can find a friend to stay with, whatever. They won't keep the dorms open during the recesses for those students who are not native born to the country. But you accept them
to come here to learn.
Right, and in knowing what their financial situation is, and then expect them to house sit or stay with a friend during break because you don't want to leave the dorms open because you don't want to have to pay heat, hot water, and electricity. So there's one young lady who they told her that they would keep the dorm open for 2 days and then she's on her own. But everybody else is trying to scatter. So you are a magnet to the world, and people get here, and if they don't look the right way, you don't want to treat them correctly.
So the other question is, what happened to humanity? What happened to just what we can do for our brothers and sisters? And the level, is it just something that we just talk about, but it's just something fantasy? I mean, if it's at a level that high and they have students and they're here strictly to learn, what is the problem? What isn't there something that they could put in place? Because if these individuals were to then be forced to go out to grab something so that they could have money to stay up in a hotel or something like that, who is forcing their hand to do criminal activity or to maybe hurt other people? I mean, I'm just thinking.
No, you're right. Housing is supposed to be a human right. I understand the UN internationally decided that housing is a human right. So in order to have housing, you have to have a job. But education is not considered a human right. Education always started out as something for folks who had the money, for the elitists. And then eventually, those of us who are not elite were allowed to go to school.
Well, I know that the Germans had some kind of...
you can go to school for free in Germany.
Yes, of course, but I know that
you can go to school for free in Cuba.
Yes.
You know,
yes.
Why can't you go to school for free here in the States? I don't understand why, let's say an Ivy League school, I'm not sure, I think it's Harvard. Why is tuition $100,000 a year? What am I getting for $100,000 a year? I understand you have to pay staff. I understand you have to maintain buildings and so on. But you have a large student population. What are you doing for $100,000 a year, and am I getting my money's worth? I doubt it. I really do doubt it. Housing is necessary for you to be able to do what you need to do. I grew up in a family where we owned property. We weren't rich. We weren't the Rockefellers. We owned an apartment building. And my grandfather treated all the tenants the way he treated our household.
Fair.
He made sure that every year, if it was time for you to get a paint job, he knocked on your door and said what colors you want. You didn't have to come look for him. If your faucet went crazy at 9 o'clock at night, he came, turned off what he needed to turn off, called the plumber. The plumber was there before you went to work if he could get there. We had real wood floors. They were sanded every 2 years. When we had a coal furnace, and I remember the coal furnace, my grandmother and I were home one day, and the temperature in the house dropped and the water dropped. And one of our neighbors who grew up with my father, my uncle, came and knocked on the door and said, Miss Jackman, the heat's down. You want me to go put some coal in the furnace? She said, no, you just had a baby. Go back in the house. We're going to go do this. And my grandmother went downstairs and shoveled enough coal into the furnace to keep the house warm till my grandfather or my father came home. You know, and then his whole purpose, he always used to say that you need a house as a foundation so you can go out and do what you need to do in the world. So you need a house where you can sleep properly, where you can eat properly, where you can go out and get an education without having to worry. And a lot of children have been deprived of that. I know there's stories of children who are in shelter who have literally rode the trains at night and graduated at the top of their high school classes. But they shouldn't have to be on the train all night long to study, to graduate from high school. This whole housing thing we started on, they're not building affordable housing for the people who need it. I've been in the system. I'm living in supportive housing now, single room occupancy. I don't need to be there. I don't have a substance abuse problem now, nor in the past, and I don't plan on having one in the future.
I understand.
Thankfully, I've never had a mental health issue. They may drive me crazy with this nonsense, but I haven't had one. So I don't belong where I am. And they talk about, oh, well, we need supportive housing for those poor souls on the street. You have supportive housing. I have neighbors who go to work. I have neighbors who are disabled, who need to be in a studio apartment where they can navigate their wheelchairs. Yes, I have neighbors who have substance abuse and who have mental health issues. But you have enough supportive housing. You need to be building real housing.
That's right.
He has a plan where he's building this apartment complex. I believe it's in East New York, some part of Brooklyn. And part of it's going to be real housing and part of it's going to be shelter. Why?
Well, that doesn't make sense.
You spend $1 billion. This year's budget for Department of Homeless Services is $1 billion. You can have housing for that. When I was in the system, they pay $3,500 for you as a general population person, which means you can go to work, you can go to school. Plus the storage I had for my one-bedroom garden apartment that I had to move out of because of foreclosure, and then other things happened where I could not maintain an apartment. But they spent, in 4 years, they spent enough money to keep me in my apartment, which was $950 for 12 years. So that's a waste of money.
Yes.
That's definitely a waste of money. If you could have kept me housed in a real apartment for 12 years, with a 4-year budget, there's a problem somewhere.
Absolutely.
And that's in the system.
Yeah,
you know?
absolutely.
You talk about helping people. The only way you're going to help people is to stop landlords from building housing the way they're building it. Times had an article in February about all our beautiful, tall, luxury co-op buildings that are empty. Epic Times had an article in the last 6 weeks. New York real estate is now the new Swiss bank.
Okay.
Folks are coming in on the weekend, on Friday, and they have appointments with real estate agents on Saturday, and they're going around looking at co-ops and condos, and they're coming in with cash. They're buying them as an investment and then going back to whatever country they came from.
Right.
Meanwhile, we need housing.
Right. More poverty pimping.
Oh, on a major scale.
I call that poverty pimping.
On a major scale.
And I call that also really working against the people that are born and raised and live here that should be able to have a space. And that's more on the notion of, for an example, when you keep all of these luxury empty apartments that are already finished and nice, what are you keeping it for? To make more money? Is it the Olympics? Is that your plan? To be able to bring all the people that come and apply? If New York gets the Olympics, they could have a place to live for free while the people here are starving to death, freezing to death, burning up to death, depending on what the weather is, just each and every day, and no kind of care or thought for these individuals that are struggling and are making their way out to try to go to school and work, or 2 jobs and 3 jobs, or trying to take care of their families best they can.
I'm sorry. Folks don't realize that the real estate market gentrifying communities is adding to the homeless problem.
Yes, of course.
There was an action under Metro North in Harlem because that was an enclave for the homeless in that neighborhood. So now the gentrifiers don't want to see them. There's literally a line of green cabs when they get off of Metro North so they don't have to look at those people and they can go home. But there was an action, and one of the women I know who attended it spoke to an elder who was there. And she said she was priced out of the house. Her parents raised her and her siblings in. She raised her children in, and then she was raising grandchildren in that apartment. So we're talking about 3 generations living in one apartment in Harlem. And now a woman near her 70s is now out on the street because the landlord wants to turn it into co-ops. So she didn't do anything to wind up on the street. She paid her rent, but she has a greedy landlord. Until government reins in the monopoly that real estate people have on this country, it's going to be crazy. 2 years ago, they said that there was 3.5 million homeless people across the country, which is wrong. But there was 18.5 million empty homes in foreclosure. So that meant 3 years ago, there was 5 houses, 6 houses for every homeless person. Why do we have homelessness?
Exactly.
Why?
And that is something that I really would like de Blasio and everybody else, all the way to the White House, to address and get us some answers, some concrete answers. And not just answer, do something about it. Change. This is the time for change. This is the holidays. This is about family. This is about communities. This is about neighborhoods. And what must be done to fix this problem is just outrageous. You know, all these things are just part of, to me, it's just it's more of it's a crisis that's, the poverty pimping is adding to the crisis in just every direction that we talk about. We already touched upon a few things, and of course I want you to even get deeper into it, you know, but hopefully that will be in a continuation show, the show directly after this, episode 2, which I'm just so grateful and wonderful that you're here to be able to update us on the facts. But I do know that we had several times to where we had to where even the kids that are standing up strong, the ones that are going to college, because they don't have a job out there.
They have to.
Yeah.
And they're coming out of school with, I mean, maybe CUNY students are coming out with $100,000 in loans, but they're kids who are going to school, like I said before, where you have $100,000 tuition. So they're kids who are coming out of school with close to $500,000 in debt, and there's no jobs. None.
And not in the fields that they're specializing in and going to school for.
That's it.
And then the other thing is, if we're New York, the great New York, why do we solve the problem as pushing the people here that have been educated here and here elsewhere to find a living?
Well, that was Bloomberg's plan. He said when he became mayor that he was going to turn this into the new international diamond city, and we were welcome to work here, but we couldn't live here, just him and his friends. And it's coming true. You know, there was a post on Facebook recently about gentrification again, and I made it clear that they're going to start surrounding New York City with barges, and they're going to start pushing us into the barges so the rich folks can have the islands. You know, New York is going to become rich for them, and then we can go live on the barges, get off the barge, come in, clean a house, do whatever, and then get back on the barge. But like you said, they're going to push us into the water. Yeah,
they're going to push us into the water. But what happens when they push us into the water? Who's going to be there to work for them? How are they going to maintain? Is that a question that I can ask? Because then when you push everybody into the water and there's no one there to do... Because, well, first of all, let me just clarify. All work is important at all levels and all stages. And it's just like we have a lot of people that don't mind, and I know that the holidays are upon us, but, you know, just the idea to think that, you know, we can spend millions of dollars to put up a Christmas tree and decorations. And meanwhile, when we turn around the corner, we see people sleeping on cardboard boxes and with their hand out and a bag out, just trying to make it to see if they can get a sandwich.
Yes.
So that again, it also makes me happy, of course, to see the tree and see people ice skating in the seasons, and that kind of thing is a beautiful thing, you know, and because our hearts are full with that. And even the people that don't celebrate the holidays but have different other holidays, but I'm trying to want to get back to the main course of what this life and what this existence of ours is all about. And I think that there's a lot of things that, you know, that don't jive.
We no longer look at each other as fellow people. Humanity has taken a backseat to money and greed.
And the
some
environment.
some of us do realize that we share this planet with other people, Mother Nature, animals, etc. And other people really don't care so long as they get what they want, how they want, when they want it, and they don't care how much it costs because they can make that dollar. And then the rest of us, oh well, poor you, you haven't tried hard enough. When in reality, we're trying as hard as we can. We need to think about each other. You need to think. I was taught the golden rule: do unto others as you would have them do unto you. And we're not doing that. You need to think about that. This time of year, folks are going out spending a lot of money on things they're not even going to use. You can donate that money to a charity. New York Cares is collecting coats to give away. So you can do something. It doesn't have to be major. If you see somebody who's in that corner every day, buy them food.
That's
Reach
right.
out.
Thank you, my sister. Of course, we are about to just leave that in your mind for thought of anything, anyhow, that you can do. And we're not even talking about monetary things. We're just talking about decency.
That's it.
As far as whatever you can do to make this world better, let's get started with it now. Right now, me and Miss Kendall, we want to tell you thank you so much. And this will be the end of episode 1.